Morris People podcast. I'm here with Maya Morena. I'm trying to figure out how to be in Indian style, crisscross applesauce in the back. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yes.
For this episode. What's going on? What's happening?
Everything is happening.
Yeah, you're very active right now with your political views.
Yeah, I've always been that way ever since I started. Entered it in like 2017.
Yeah.
So I've been in it for a little bit, but that was like more of when I tried to go into mainstream porn, and I only like lasted 8 months.
Why?
I think it was the agency and the preferential treatment for some certain people,
Yeah.
and kind of got thrown under the bus. So I didn't end up in like a good situation in LA. I think it was also because I just didn't know anybody out
Right.
there. So I just didn't have any kind of support network.
Right.
Once everything kind of dropped. So yeah, I had to move back home and fell into like a state of depression for a year, and managed to kind of get into like the sex worker activism community. Had a support network of like people who knew me a little bit from like activism and stuff. So then when I moved out, I had more supportive people and was able to get my own place.
That's great. That's great. So wait, so where you said you had to move back home? Where's back home?
Long Island.
So Long Island. That's where you're from originally. But you're taking a big stance right now on immigration and open borders. This is your big.
I mean, that's always been my thing.
Yeah. So where are you from? Where are you from originally? Where are your people from?
Honduras.
Honduras. Okay. And then is your family directly from Honduras? Like, do you have people there?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. It right now is especially a hairy time.
Yeah, that's been weird because we're like at the center of the map, and previously no one really knew who we were.
Hondurans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really weird.
Yeah. So okay, so as far as that goes, so, I mean, we're in Brooklyn now. How do you feel about Brooklyn versus Long Island?
I think I more like the city because I think it definitely is more my vibe, whereas Long Island is where I grew up anyway. It was a lot more conservative, very repressed. It was hard to find a radical community.
Yeah.
I think kind of Long Island is falling apart.
What do you mean?
The schooling system, the property taxes, just a lot of stuff. Like everything's kind of, people are leaving Long Island in droves. Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what else? What are your hot topics right now that you're like worried about? How do you keep yourself like a sane person navigating this world right now?
Having sex definitely helps.
Okay.
Going out to drink and having pizza, or just generally eating out. Dancing helps. But yeah, I'd really like having my community.
Yeah.
And being around them, going to book clubs, just talking about where we want to move the movement into is really powerful because it puts the power in your hand. You feel like you have more of a say, and I feel like we are making a lot of we're getting a lot of traction.
Yeah. Well, we'll catch us up. But pretend that we have no idea, because you're so far ahead in the thing. Pretend we have no idea what's going on and what people think about sex workers and what the problems are and what you're trying to gain. Like, start from scratch as if we don't know anything. Let's assume we don't know anything.
Well, I mean, the way that I started was, I wouldn't say the way I started. I think this was like when I really started to get into the movement a lot more, was when Peter Koo of Queens declared that he was going to do a crackdown on massage parlor workers in Queens.
This was when?
This was way back in March, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah, he said he was going to work with local police and the tenants to basically eliminate massage parlor workers from the community. And he kind of did it in front of a children's playground to basically say that, like, prostitutes solicit customers in front of the children, so we're doing this for the children.
Right.
And the way he kind of justified it is the next week he had, like, a seminar for human trafficking. So he basically said, I'm going to do this crackdown on massage parlor workers, and that area of Flushing, Queens is like heavily Asian.
Yeah.
So it's really targeting like Asian women,
Sure.
migrants who work in these massage parlor places. It's kind of like doing a crackdown on all those Asian places that have like nail salons and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's so prominently like an Asian kind of underground market.
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah,
Well, you're talking about the rub and tugs, but do you think that they're reaching the rub and tug people, or do you think that they're just using it as sort of a?
no, that's who they're targeting. But he said that after he announced that, he said he was going to do a seminar for human trafficking, which he did, and me and some of my friends did a protest for it.
Yeah.
And I was they pushed me in to do speaking at the very end. So
Like
that's
with a
like a little
what's it
speaker
called?
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually showed up to the protest early, so I wanted to see what the opposition and the politicians were up to.
Yeah.
But yeah, the police actually like gated up the place where we were supposed to be protesting.
Yeah.
And when I went inside, it was just like
Meaning they made it so you couldn't get there, or they gave you an area so you could protest and
no, we were supposed to be doing a teach out event to teach the community what was really happening.
Yeah.
And the steps where you accustomedly do that kind of stuff, like they completely blocked out the steps. Yeah, so you had to like go into like the deeper corner of the triangle where the public library was. And yeah, so I went inside. I went early, and I kind of saw that they had already locked it up, and I wasn't sure what it was in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I went inside, and there was like 4 domestic violence shelters or like family shelters, those kinds of places. And I was like, oh, okay. I kind of already knew that something that the state has been doing is conflating human trafficking with domestic violence.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's been weird to see the evolution of human trafficking over the years, because it used to be something that predominantly faced people in third world countries or immigrants. So it was something that happened like to other people.
Yeah.
And then it kind of became this thing of like foreigners coming here, taking daughters and like selling them overseas to be sex slaves or something. And now it's different. It's like, oh, no, it's not typically like that. Now it's, traffickers trick girls into falling in love with them, and it's like a relationship.
Right. Like the pimp prostitute relationship.
No, it's like domestic violence is what they say now.
Okay.
So if like you look up like human trafficking and domestic violence, that's what a lot of sex trafficking organizations are saying now, is that like, oh yeah, it's kind of like domestic violence.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about that?
I think it's wrong, like on so many levels.
You say, well, what's wrong? You're saying that the opinion is wrong?
Yeah, I think it's gotten to a point where I kind of just tell my followers, at least, that human trafficking, the way the state defines it, is for the most part bullshit.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't believe it.
Yeah. So tell us what's really going on.
Well, I was in a domestic kind of violent relationship. And when I called the police because he was chasing me with a knife and threatening to kill himself and stuff, the police and the FBI got involved.
Yeah.
And they told me that I was a victim of human trafficking.
Interesting. In New York?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And yeah, this is something that like police are trained to do now to domestic violence victims. They're trained to tell you that you're a victim of human trafficking. So they told me that that this is how it works, that like guys like lover boys, like they're playboys, and they like trick women into falling in love with them.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they're selling you.
But were you being sold?
No.
So I'm so confused.
No, that's just what sex trafficking organizations are telling them to say.
Yeah, interesting.
The reason.
What's the ultimate goal?
Well, the reason they're doing that is because they understand where sex workers go for business.
Right.
So because sex workers have been pushed off Backpage and Craigslist, now they're going on dating websites.
Interesting.
To solicit customers. So Tinder, Instagram, all the places that we are on social media and dating sites.
Snapchat.
Yeah. So if you look on Polaris and other sex trafficking organizations that actually work with the feds and police, they want like facial recognition software online. They want to be able to connect your phone number to your social media accounts,
right,
so the government can go after you for being a buyer.
Right.
And they're basically saying that human trafficking happens on Instagram and Snapchat and Plenty of Fish and Tinder.
Okay, I see. So they're trying to link sex work to this larger, worse problem so that they can get the rally behind them to try and eliminate.
I think they really believe it, but I think the point is that anything that involves sex work or could involve sex work, they kind of just put the name human trafficking to it because they don't see it as labor. So, women who are in a domestic violence relationship, one of the things that the abuser does is they take control of the finances.
Right.
So some of those women are in the sex industry.
Right.
So you can just say that it's human trafficking now.
Whereas what you're saying is these people that are in this industry that by choice are very savvy and are very much in control of their finances, and they're making a living this way, and that's...
But it's being persecuted, and it's really horrific now because it's starting to hit other women that aren't in the sex industry.
Sure.
Like, I was told this before I was in the industry, that I was a victim of human trafficking, and it did not help in the slightest.
Right.
It actually made me panic even more. For like a year, I believed it.
Right.
And
you were like, was I brainwashed? Was it like...
No, I thought I was a human traffic. Like, I thought I was going to be a slave.
Right.
Like, it was just really a terrifying moment. And the police basically told me, they gave me the advice that they give all domestic violence victims, which is write down any incidents of abuse and keep track of it and the dates and everything that you can, and try to get an order of protection.
Right. Were you still in the relationship when you were starting to seek police protection, or?
Yeah, I was in the relationship. I called them like during an emergency,
Yeah.
but like they basically told me to do that. They gave me that as advice, like, oh, if he seriously tries to hurt you, like call us again.
You were still in the relationship. You went back with him and you were working it out.
No, this was what they told me when I called.
Yeah.
And I was having the incident. This is like they literally told me after they were like doing an investigation on him, like, oh yeah, this is what it is. But like, yeah, they gave me that advice, and basically like I was on my own, and they just walked away. Yeah. Which is, now looking back, I'm like, if you really think I'm going to be a victim of slavery, why would you just leave?
Right.
It was really interesting. But a lot of people believe this now. Right. So a lot of people on like social media, they'll get like a lot of likes if they say something like that. I know Shane Dawson's like best friend from when I was a kid, like watching them. I don't know if you remember that goofy girl with like the weird teeth and loud smile. No. But like, yeah, her and Shane Dawson used to make videos together like in the early years, and she kind of fell off the map for a while, I think. I didn't really see much of her, but she was in an abusive relationship. Right. And the police and FBI told her she's a victim of human trafficking. So Shane Dawson made like a conspiracy video about it, because he does conspiracy videos now. And yeah, she thinks she's a victim of like of human trafficking, that like he was just tricking her to fall in love with him, and like he married her and then he impregnated her so that he could take the baby and then sell it overseas. Right. But none of this happened. No, it did. Like, she was in a domestically violent abusive relationship. He had control of the finances. Right. She wasn't in the sex industry. Yeah. But they had a kid together. Yeah. And he was violent. Like, and from... But he wasn't trying to sell their child. No. Like, she had no, like, evidence of it. But, like, even Shane, during the thing, was, like, kind of skeptical of it. Yeah. So he didn't really believe in it. But obviously, like, you can't ignore the fact that he was abusive. Right. So, like, that was still there. But, like, she kind of went into this freak out mode of, like, he might have connections with the mafia, and how like how much a baby is worth a lot, and it was just really weird. Because it's just like people like me have to pay like tens of thousands of dollars to be shipped from across a border. It's really risky to do that, but Americans are just convinced that like people do this for free so that they can sell people. Right. Not knowing that there's like a market of people that will pay for that service to be transported. It's just... Well, that's what you're saying. You're saying that's how you got from Honduras to here? Yeah, my parents had to pay $10,000 to get you. Yeah. Or themselves? Me. Just me. Just a person. Just for one person, it costs like $10,000 to $30,000 or even more. To come over here as an illegal.
is what you're saying.
No, to like hire somebody to bring you over.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying with the human trafficking narrative is like really weird because why would someone do that for free?
Yeah, I know. Again, you're skipping pieces for me, so I don't know what you mean by the narrative is weird because I don't know.
Well, the narrative kind of changes, but the typical narrative is like some way somehow there is a person and they either trick you to fall in love with them and transport you across state lines or
Yeah.
a border and they sell you somewhere and you're a slave basically, or they kidnap you and then they sell you. Like
Right.
that's kind of the
Right.
overall narrative. I feel like
Well,
everyone
that's what
knows.
human trafficking is, right?
No, I mean, yes, it can be, but like it's so that specific thing is so rare and it's not.
So what is it? So what are you defining human trafficking as? And
Well,
what's your position?
well, legally defined, like people don't understand that it's not what you see in the movies or what these sex trafficking organizations tell you. It's a legal term.
Right.
And it was created by states, by the UN, and academics who study underground people.
Yeah.
So these people don't actually know what they're talking about. They're just elitist assholes who went to Harvard.
I'm just trying to figure out where are you saying that because sex workers, which you define yourself as, are being labeled all of these other things incorrectly, right?
That's not what I'm saying. Human trafficking justifies the persecution of immigrants and sex workers and other deviants and criminals from society.
Because we go, hey, the people that are from another country are only here to be these things.
No, it's because America has no idea how organized crime works or
Right.
like the underground works.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to streamline that part. We're like skipping. We're like kind of just chunking around. I feel like.
Yeah,
I just wanna get to what.
I have ADHD,
No,
but like
no, you're fine.
I'm
fine.
trying to explain it
You're
very
chunking around, but you have more information than us.
I
so-
guess the point I'm saying is that like the US and like a lot of these kind of academic elites assholes that they kind of created this narrative about poor people and crime and like how
Yeah, there's a lot going on right now. There are people that literally think that illegal immigrants voted in the last election, right? So there's a lot of things that are being said right now that like don't make a lot of sense that justify why we should close borders, which I think is what we're kind of circling around, right? Is that we're trying to like
I think my perspective is a little more broad
sure
because
but-
I'm talking about the prison system, the jail system,
Yeah.
the criminal justice system, the global
Right, so
police force.
So what's society as a whole is terrible.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But we can't attack all of the things at the same time. So I'm just trying to figure out how we streamline the discussion. So right now I'm still unclear as to what we're saying about what is good or bad about human trafficking, or which parts of it are good that we're mislabeling, or which parts of it are bad that we're misunderstanding, and how we get to the heart of the problem. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, I think that gets kind of complicated because these are criminalized people who are underground because they're criminalized by the state.
Which people?
People who are buying drugs, using drugs,
Yeah.
selling drugs, people who are selling sex, buying sex, people who are buying weapons illegally
Yeah.
and selling weapons illegally, people who are smuggling. Anything that just exists outside of like regular capitalism or
Right.
the state, basically.
And but go ahead.
Yeah, so with these underground, markets, they have to stay underground and they're hidden because they're criminalized and persecuted by the state. And they are loose collections of people trying to kind of just get by and find what they need. But because of the fact that we are criminalized, it makes us more vulnerable and it makes us dependent on certain people because
So here's my question. You're saying you said a bunch of things, bunch of people, drugs, guns, all these things. You're putting yourself in the same category. Does that help the overall discussion? Because nobody thinks that people that sell guns illegally should just be able to do that, right? Like that's not
it's not my topic to discuss, but like when the state talks about it, they put all these things together.
So that's what I'm saying. So they cram everything in the same place. So my point is, let's remove those things so that we talk about the overall discussion, which is the sex worker activism.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys stand for? The idea is this has been around. We're doing this in a safe, protected, and commercialized way, and we don't. Go ahead.
No, I'm completely for breaking the law.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
like
so,
I don't believe in legal markets at all.
Interesting.
So, like it's for me, it's kind of
But
like
this law, because it is a law, so you're not even interested in changing the law.
no, I am. I
Okay.
want to make it. I want to decriminalize it. It
Right.
shouldn't be something that's criminalized. But again, when you say that, like, oh, we're doing this in a safe environment and it's legal and it's commercial,
You don't believe that.
it's not.
Okay.
It's not. Why would we need to decriminalize it if it's already legal and safe and
I didn't say
commercial?
legal. I didn't say legal, but the idea. But so what you're saying is that politicians and so on and so forth, and people that have the money and control society and control the cops are trying with all of their might and power and influence to create and cram all of the worst things on earth into also what you're doing.
Yeah.
Guns, drugs, sex, selling babies. They're trying to say that those are all the same thing.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
they think sex workers are like the pimp lobby. They think
Right,
we are
so I'm saying-
pedophiles. They think we're
so-
druggies.
Right, so
They
I-
think we're
I
trafficking
know,
people.
and so I'm
So,
saying,
like-
how are you different? And let's talk about that.
I'm
That's
not
what
different. I am all those things. I
Okay.
refuse to be like, yeah, these are the bad people. Like,
Interesting.
I think the state has no right at judgment because they created these problems.
Okay.
They can't be like mad about like, oh, the horrible court. You made the cartels.
Right.
That's like being mad about the mafia, but like you were the one that made prohibition.
Right.
So these markets were created because you criminalized it and
Right.
people had to go underground. It was deadly because you did it. This power fell into gangs because you did it.
Right.
So for me, it's kind of like, yeah, I could sit here and be like, yeah, these people are horrible, but that to me just will justify the state going in there and trying to save us, and we don't need that. We just need them to decriminalize this.
So for you, what laws make sense then?
I just want the regular stuff that they use to persecute sex workers, like loitering, vagrancy, persecuting people and having condoms.
Right.
Which they've been doing forever against the gay, LGBT, sex worker community. Like all those laws that they use to persecute poor people and sex workers need to be decriminalized because they shouldn't be going after people for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That's it. It's a little more complicated than that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a deep issue, but again, then we were just throwing handfuls.
Yeah, I think it's I guess hard to get to that. But yeah, we know who the bad people in our community are. Like
Right.
sex workers have had like lists of bad clients.
Right.
Usually like serial rapists
So
or
that's
like
what I mean. So
violent.
that's the part that I'm saying where it's like there's a
they don't-
level of safety that you guys are creating in your community
Yeah.
to protect yourselves from this other thing, and there's always going to be a bad element to anything, and it's like and this is a horrible analogy from the standpoint of this discussion, but it's like at a comedy club we don't let the hecklers win. So it's the same thing. You guys are self-regulating now, and it would be nice, obviously, if you didn't have to self-regulate in that kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if the police went after them, but they don't.
Right.
They just won't do it without persecuting you.
It is a weird. New York is a weird place for the police element, and I think even smaller towns are even worse. But I was in Brooklyn when in my first relationship, and it started to become abusive. And this woman would come to my shows, and when we were trying to break up, couldn't handle the breakup, and then would attack me in front of an audience of people, and then somehow still I would be the one that they would put behind bars, or both of us. They put either me or both of us because it's sort of these your word against your word kind of things. And that was the first time I realized that like. There's not a lot of help. There's not a lot of assistance and laws that you thought were to protect you aren't really about you.
Yeah, the laws are blind. So even if like you hit someone in self-defense, you're seen as like what is it called, battery or something? When
Sure.
So
There's assault, there's battery, right?
Yeah, assault or battery, whatever. You're still like put into jail for like
Right.
fighting back. So people don't understand that like the law is often really blind, and they're kind of trying to funnel people into the system, and that's how we have the biggest prison population in the world now.
Yeah. Well, this is a different discussion I was having with somebody recently, off podcast, but the idea that because we've allowed corporations to get into prisons, then the upside is the more prisoners, the more money can be made. Because again, we've taken away someone's rights and we're making them build a thing or make a thing, and now the companies can literally have free labor.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack. So how long have you been in this country?
Since I was 5.
Since you were 5. And then how long have your parents been in the country?
More than 20 years.
Okay.
Well, more than 30 years. I would 30, 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. And what is it? I mean, what's the pride of being Honduran? What's a big thing that people think about people from Honduras, and what's a big thing that they should know?
Unfortunately, I kind of lost touch with a lot of my culture. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I know about my culture is just the food, but like I don't even like know their names.
Yeah.
Like it's just kind of whatever my mom makes me.
Yeah.
I know it if I see it. But yeah.
And do you speak Spanish?
Not fluently.
Not fluently. Okay, so this is interesting. So I have the same kind of relationship with I'm Italian. And so Italians came over in certain periods of time. One of those periods of time was like the 20s, and we came over through Ellis Island, and we all had our names changed and all these things.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah. What's that? To come legally?
I want Ellis Island back. That was open borders.
Yeah. Well, we need a new election, or a lot of things need to happen currently. But what I run into this prejudice with newer Italians. New Jersey Italians came over sort of traditionally in the 80s, 90s, the 70s. So all of those people, their parents are from Italy and they speak Italian. And my people came over in the 20s when it was a very hairy time to be an immigrant. We were letting people in, but there was a lot of racism. So there was a lot of grouping. So like Italians all lived with each other, Irish people all lived with each other, and people were just throwing racial slurs around. It was one of these periods of time. So my family made the choice that they wanted their kids, my grandparents, to only speak English, go to schools, learn English, come home and bring it to them. So I get this thing where people that have come over in the 70s, 80s, their parents are direct, and they still speak the language because it was a arguably better time to come over from a prejudicial period of time. They feel that they're more in touch with the heritage, and I have this sort of argument. They're like, no, my people got here like 100 years ago. We're the OG Italians. Like we're the most. We built the Erie Canal. Like we dug the Erie Canal. We built all the churches. Like we're the people. So it is interesting when you disconnect from the culture. The sort of the prejudices then that start to come around. It's like I don't know what it is about being human that we will find any reason to try and discount or hate somebody based on almost no information.
Yeah, my parents kind of raised me to conform.
Yeah.
So I was like raised in white suburbia, and my real name is actually very English sounding.
Yeah.
So yeah, very proper.
That's right.
So unfortunately that's how they raised me, and it worked, but it's bad because like I'm not able to fit in quite like the previous immigrants were able to just kind of easily come here. So yeah, it was around that time during Ellis Island where these kind of movements kind of started. So there was various nativist movements that started to spring up, and a lot of women during the time, because they were just entering the workforce, and I think during that time they were just about to like abolish slavery. They started to have these assimilation like passing out pamphlets,
right.
like insisting that the new immigrants had to assimilate and learn English. So
we're going to change your name. We're going to make you part of the culture. Right.
Yeah, getting mad if you didn't conform and you still spoke Italian or whatever.
Right.
Obviously, like alcoholism became a thing, and this kind of idea that these new immigrants that are darker skinned are bringing in alcoholism.
Right. You're right. This is
and they're whores, and yeah, that was like a thing that they also were proposing. So there was like the social purity movement, the women's temperance movement were really big, but yeah, that's kind of how the internet was made as well. I forgot what it was called, but it was the commoncy, something like that, like common decency or like act of whatever for the internet, which was funny, but it was just a way they wanted to try to eliminate vice from the internet.
Dark web, right?
Yeah,
like where you go to get to
Well,
get.
no, they wanted that was like part of the like internet agreement that they changed with Sister Fosta.
Right.
And the whole point of that when they originally drafted it was to eliminate vice from the internet, and obviously it didn't work because there was a proliferation of like porn, and
Yeah.
they were
Well,
very
yeah, it worked for a
upset.
second, right? And then eventually everything evened back
It was
out.
like "Mwahaha,"
Yeah.
back with a vengeance.
Right.
But yeah, all these like purity movements came about, and they wanted to basically they believed it was the progressive thing to do. They believed that the government should have social control
Right.
over the populace, so controlling your sexual behavior, no alcohol, no drugs, no homosexuality,
Right, you're
etc.
right. All the Bible stuff. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're still there, and we're still there in a lot of ways, and and there's so many countries that are still there.
Yeah, and
in a
it
lot of
worked.
ways.
Has anyone told you about the white slave myth back then?
What's the white slave myth?
It was so funny. I like researched a lot about this, and I even read like a New York Times archive of like an article they wrote about the white slave trade. And because remember, this was when they had just abolished slavery,
Right.
so there was like this hysteria and moral panic because not only did they abolish slavery, but women were entering the workforce. So
Right.
there was like a lot of anxieties.
Well, any change in the way capitalism is working is a huge problem.
Yeah, so like the narrative was that black men or Jews or Turkish men, whatever, were like capturing white women and enslaving them in the sex trade, like making
Interesting.
them sex slaves. That was really popular, along with the whole like, oh, if you drink alcohol, they called it the alcohol traffic back in the day. That
Yeah.
was how they advertised it. Stop the alcohol traffic. It's ruining families.
Interesting.
10,000 boys, 10,000 drunkards will die because of the alcohol traffic.
Right.
Or the liquor traffic was another word for it. So there was like pictures of women and children like crying and saying, who are you going to vote for? Are you going to vote for family? Or are you going to vote for like, they had like a big fat, man
Right.
with all this liquor. You're going to vote for the liquor traffic.
Right. Interesting.
And that was kind of how the ads for both were kind of similar. So for men, it was like the liquor traffic, and for women, it was the white slave traffic.
Yeah.
And there was like a bunch of crackdowns. So the police would crack down on Chinese and Hispanic neighborhoods.
Right.
Because the idea was that they were the ones bringing in this.
Right. We have this problem. Where did it come from? It must be coming from immigrants. This is
And
the
Jewish
classic,
communities
Yeah, the
and
classic America myth. Well, really anywhere. But
and-
we're the big immigrant country, so we're the one that can just go. Yeah, it's them.
Yeah.
It must be them.
Yeah, it got really bad. Like even the FBI got involved.
Yeah.
They had a white slave division.
Interesting.
They would go into like brothels and start interviewing like the newest. If basically every time there was a new girl that was going to work in the brothels, the person had to immediately call the FBI, and the FBI would go interview her. And you could actually like find clips of it online if you look enough. But there's clippings of the FBI like writing about it.
No shit.
If they found that you were like mixed blood or immigrant, they would deport you.
No
So you had to be white to work in that industry.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually the episode right before this one was with Dapper Dan, who is a black man who's in his 60s, and he sort of started a couple of like all black women's, men's magazines with nude women, because at the beginning of his career, it was all white women in the magazines. And anytime he suggested that they try to put anybody, brown, ethnic, anything, they were sort of like, we don't think that's going to sell. We don't think that that's going to be a thing that people want to see. And he found a lot of success in creating these black women naked magazines because the market was there, and
Yeah, I definitely encountered a lot of that in the mainstream porn industry, and it's kind of one of the main reasons I left. I mean, now, like, I've kind of, because I moved back home, I kind of became a lot lighter skinned, but I'm so comfortable in New York City that I would not want to go back to LA.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I guess LA is an interesting one, and it is. I mean, the most of the mainstream porn is still sort of like is white heavy, and anything that's not white is sort of now has to have all sorts of hashtags on it, right?
Yeah, I think they try to like make you any race that they can.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's that, right, for the other thing, but it's more the fact that like if you or even I now, not that anybody cares about men, but I have this ethnicity thing that they're always trying to spin me because I'm Italian, but nobody thinks I'm Italian. They think I'm Iranian, they think I'm Persian, they think I'm Indian, they think I'm whatever, right? Spanish, whatever they want. They try to clump me, which is just an interesting thing because it's like what the hashtag. There's no hashtag for white. Like there's no hashtag looking for white.
yeah, it's the
In porn.
default.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's
It's interesting.
just sadly the truth.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very complicated. Unfortunately, it's like a reflection of larger society. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of these laws that were made, like we were saying, talking about before, some of these laws that were created are still in place today. So I believe the Page Act is still in place, and the
What's
Mann
the Page
Act. The Page Act is not, or is it? Oh yeah, I think it is. Okay, but basically, what made it against the law to have somebody here for forced servitude and for sexual slavery or prostitution.
Yeah.
And this effectively banned all Chinese women.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's funny that like the whole point of the bill was to eliminate prostitution, but it did the opposite because then Chinese men were here alone.
I see.
So
Interesting.
then they obviously like
Wait,
yeah.
so Chinese men were losing their wives, or they were losing? Who are they losing in the process?
Well, there was no Chinese women. They were all deported.
Because,
Of
but
the
how? I'm trying to figure out how did that law?
Well, because like white people think Chinese women are whores.
Yeah.
Like they just think that Chinese women just naturally are that way. So like when they would go to the checkpoint, even if like they had a wedding ring or whatever, it was hard to prove to them that you were a good woman and
Right.
that you were going to do good work here. So they just wouldn't let you in.
Interesting.
And then they would deport the Chinese women that were already here.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like the men kind of, some of them lost their wives, and then like they didn't have anyone to really have sex with or like develop relationships with. So then
Prostitution on the rise.
yeah, that's.
And then what's the Mann Act?
The Mann Act makes it illegal to someone over for like human trafficking,
Yeah.
and that's basically what it is. But the way it's famously used is to criminalize black men, interracial marriages and relationships, basically, and mainly persecuted black men.
Interesting.
But that's why, like, when people say that, like, oh, human trafficking is mainly bullshit, some people get mad. Some people are like, what? Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, but it's like, I mean, historically and the way it's used today, I mean, yeah, it is.
It's what? It's bullshit?
Yeah.
So what is? I mean, so our greatest fear, the thing that we clump into human trafficking. Are you saying that this is not happening, or we're saying that you don't clump the other things into it?
I just call this labor exploitation.
Okay. Meaning.
Because we're all being exploited.
Right.
So when you think of it that way, you stop seeing, because I think human trafficking does a lot of things, just as well as like justifying state violence. It also creates a division among workers,
Right.
where like, oh yeah, there's these bunch of people that are exploited to a point where I can't even imagine.
Right.
They're like chained up and they can't speak for themselves.
Right.
Which is weird because,
Are you saying that doesn't?
I mean, look, if somebody is kidnapped and they're chained up and they're forced to labor like a literal slave, and they just can't reach out for help, and, you know, one day, like, the police come in and save the person, that person can still speak for themselves.
Right.
Like, they really don't need these academics like, I speak for the voiceless.
Right.
We have to increase police budgets and crack down on prostitution and immigration and close the border. It's the only way. It's for the children. I speak for the voiceless. Like, that's bullshit.
Right.
Because we can speak for ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I see the larger point.
Yes. But like, yeah, that's literally how they always talk, and they get very emotional. Yeah, and it's really weird, because obviously if you go and follow their narrative, right, my smuggler is this horrible person that like just is pure evil. But
right. So you're saying specifically for you, the person that brought you in could be arrested for a thing that
he
doesn't,
was.
and for a thing that's not associated at all with what he does. He's so in your eyes, he's helping families and connecting people and getting them to this country
Well,
for a fee.
the thing is, people are bad and they're good, but the larger picture is this person's just a flesh and blood person.
He's just trying to make a buck.
He's just a flesh and blood person, and that's not good and bad. He's not being like necessarily greedy or not greedy. It's because the way the human trafficking narrative works is that like there's these bunch of evil people and they are responsible for all the slavery and the exploitation and the bad things of the world, and they're evading authorities and like they're subverting Western civilization.
Right.
We need to like crack down on them and bring them out of the shadows.
Yeah.
So this kind of like all powerful smuggler, trafficker, pimp
Right.
that just like is a slave owner, and like these aren't plantation owners. They literally have no power. There is no police officer or government backing them up like actual people that are
like the actual slave trade was. It's a much more underground and less financed thing.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah, recently I found out the academic who actually made that connection, that he started calling it human trafficking and then basically started calling it the modern slave trade.
Yeah.
I have to research more on him, but I just found out about him and I'm like, oh, you're the one.
Right.
But yeah, like he even admitted in an article that he basically made it up.
Right.
And, he was a little bit upset about the fact that people regularly cite him as like, oh, human trafficking is the third largest market in the world. And then it moved up. Like several academics over time said it's the second largest market in the world. And then other people are like, it's the number one market in the world. And unfortunately, these sex trafficking organizations, they get huge amounts of government funding. They get funding from Walmart and the Ford, all the companies that just don't exploit their workers and are
or trying really hard to make it seem that they don't, right?
Yeah, if you look at when I go on these human trafficking networks, there's like a page for like partnerships. Mm-hmm. So they're speaking to like companies. Yeah. And they sell themselves, and it's basically like, when you partner with us, it'll build brand loyalty, more customer loyalty. Yeah. People will think that you care. Right. Like things like that.
I should shop at Walmart because they care about the right things.
Yeah, actually, the number one human trafficking organization, I believe they get like 70. Yeah, the last time I checked, it was $72 million.
What's the organization?
IJM.
IJM. And so, what's their mission statement?
I can show it to you. It's International Justice Mission.
And slavery in our lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see it right here. So let me see if I can.
Go to Slavery Today. What's the mission statement say?
Well, I wanted to show you the partnerships page.
Sure.
Partnerships. Become a business that's good for the world.
Good for the world. Explores ways your company, IMJ, can fight to end slavery for good. Cultivate customer loyalty. Energize your staff and boost sales. When your business partners with IMJ, you will be the global justice movement fighting to end slavery in our lifetime. A successful partnership can strengthen your business. Yeah, that's an interesting, evil way. Yeah. Okay. As conscious consumerism becomes mainstream, products sourced ethically and sustainably will grow in popularity.
Now, again, this is just they're basically marketing themselves as like start a partnership with us. It's basically telling you like create the solution.
Give us money because you'll be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
What they're basically saying here with the middle one, energize your staff.
Yeah.
Because they basically what they do. These sex trafficking human trafficking organizations, they usually give like seminars if you partner with them. Right. So they will like lecture your workers about human trafficking. Right. And it'll energize your staff because they'll be like, see, you're not a slave. You're here on your own free will. You love your job. Don't unionize. These people are actually being exploited.
Right.
Your
it's an actual mind. Why are you complaining about
your company is good.
Yeah. Why are you complaining about
doing?
Your short lunch break and your full-time hours?
Marketing
and your
partnerships, supply chain partnerships.
Interesting.
Actually, the last time I was here, they had like a company that they said was like doing really great work. I don't know if like I feel like sometimes when I expose them, it does make a difference and they find out. because there was one domestic violence shelter that was having a partnership with police that on their human trafficking page, they listed like all these horrific things, but they had like prostitution right next to each one.
Right.
For like, and it was horrible. Once I did like a blog post about it, I went to their page like a few months later, and
they removed it.
They removed it.
No shit.
So
Go to Slavery Today. I want to see this part. Slavery Today.
Yeah, it's really weird because, a lot of people are like, oh, they're trying their best. They don't know. And I'm like,
every day innocent people are beaten, raped, and
but
abused
they
as
know.
slaves. With your help, we can rescue them. This is surprisingly very little information.
No, it always is. It's very vague.
And it's also, and every click that I take it's literally one sentence explanations, and every click that I take takes me to giving money. Yeah. And then it's just stories of people, like faceless children that have these stories.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
No, that's how it always is. Like even the reports that I found.
This is a problem that I've had. I'm actually putting together a sponsorship package for my Hoboken Comedy Festival, and I have such a comprehensive package. It's like 13 pages, and people are like, nobody wants to read 13 pages. Figure out how to make it one page. And it's like, no, I can't be that vague, but apparently I can.
You do have to. Like, people are very simplistic minded, unfortunately, and you have to. And that's why social issues don't really get solved, because they'd rather give money to these people. By the way, the guy who runs this organization is an asshole. Like, he's just really horrible. Like, literally, they did a whole like piece about him, and he's like, I know that technically what I'm doing, like, I get so much criticism because I'm an American and I'm going to other countries and working with the police forces there, and yes, I know that this has ties to imperialism, and all the police there are basically colonial powers that subvert the poor, but I think it's good to work with them, and I'm just gonna keep doing it.
Right.
So like, it's like he this guy went to Harvard. He's an evangelist. He mainly raids brothels. That's what his organization does.
Interesting.
But you don't know that from looking at this. But, but he's not gonna, like, he has a partnership with Walmart and I believe Microsoft. He's not gonna raid those people. Right. So it's like this is why this problem like never really gets solved, unfortunately. So brothels, internet. Yeah,
literally, just not. Those aren't even clickable things.
Yeah, they're not. Right. I don't.
Yeah,
they're not.
Tree cutting facilities. Just this is interesting.
It's very vague.
So we're closely approaching an hour on the episode. So what's the vibe? What's our takeaway? How do we help? What are you doing in New York that people should be paying attention to? How do we do how do we follow you? All the things.
Yeah, I'm sorry for being so long.
No, you're great.
Right now I'm doing a book club for sex workers by sex workers, and we're trying to work with incarcerated women to give them books. So you can follow us on Red Light Reader.
That's what's that on? That's Twitter, or what is Red Light Reader?
It's Twitter, it's Instagram, it's YouTube. Okay. It's a website. There's also Red Canary Song is the nonprofit that I'm trying to help build up. Okay. And that works with Asian massage workers in the Queens area, although we're trying to, expand.
Trying to represent them and.
Yeah, we talked to like 80 women. Yeah. But yeah, and
these women have lost their jobs.
No,
they're still working.
No, they're women that are working in massage parlors around the street. Yeah. Basically, so just trying to build these connections from the ground up. Decrum New York is another great organization to support. Third Wave Fund is another great one in New York, and they're just fabulous. Yeah. So supporting those organizations and any sex worker organization would be amazing, because we don't get government funding, and we're not getting like these corporations that want to fund us. Right. Yeah.
Cool. And then how do they follow you personally?
Maya Morena XXX on Twitter.
Four X's?
I think
XXXX.
Yeah, it's 3. Sorry. And then I'm not really on Instagram anymore.
Yeah, it's not a porn friendly site.
No.
And then how do they follow you specifically? How do they work with you or find your content? Those things.
MayaMorena.com, and then my Twitter is MayaMorenaXXX. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much to my guest Maya Morena. This enlightened chat. Hopefully you guys listen to us and pay attention to us. We're sponsored by Spunk Lube. Thank you to Spunk Lube. We're rebroadcast by the Demon Seed Radio folks. Thank you to Demon Seed Radio. We come up with a new episode every Monday. Check us out. We got some content today on YouTube where I can't figure out how to be comfortable. So check us out. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you again to my guest.
Hi. Bye.